Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today's HR chat session is why the workspace is important to recruiting, retention, and productivity. Today's presenters are Leesa Schipani, who's a partner at KardasLarson, and her great proficiency is in helping organizations to create great workplaces. Today, she's joined by Jennifer Gaggion, Principal Interior Designer at Design Your Monday, LLC. Jennifer helps organizations integrate their brand and culture with workplace aesthetics. As a former HR executive, Jennifer founded Design Your Monday in response to opportunities she recognized during her time in corporate America. Leesa, I'd like to hand it over to you to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Michael, and welcome to everyone who's joining us today, and in particular to Jennifer. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Lisa. It's great to be here.
Good. Well, Jennifer, let's just get started with some questions that I've heard along the way. What we're going to be talking about today is really the benefits of enhancing the workspace, um, working with a professional, why that's so important, and thinking about how do you get started if you're going to embark upon a workspace renovation. There's always budget considerations, so Jennifer will talk to us a little bit about how you stay in that budget, and then how do you measure the success of your investment. So start right off and tell us why workspace matter.
So I believe that your workspace is a reflection of your company. So if you think about the products or the services that you sell or you're trying to sell, and think what would a customer think of your workspace. So if you were trying to sell your workspace as a product, is it something you would be proud of? Does it reflect the same values that you hold for the products that you sell? The other thing about workspace is recruitment. And what people don't realize is that potential recruits, especially in today's market, are assessing the company, the people, and the space the moment that they enter the door. So they want to be sure that there's a cultural fit, that they can see themselves interacting not only with the people who they meet, but also in the environment itself. So when I think about the space, I always challenge my customers to think about the type of employee profile that they're looking to hire and take into consideration their lifestyle or their work style and think about how your space reflects those same values. The other reason that I'm going to say that workspace matters is because order, cleanliness, and well-being are characteristics of a well-designed space and arguably add to employee productivity as well. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a high design type of space, but when care and attention is taken to create and then also maintain a space, that also tells a story about the company.
Thanks, Jennifer. One quick question along those lines is if you think about the fact that we have 5 generations in the workplace, talk to us about how you weave in everybody's needs.
So I think that's an excellent point, and it's one of the components that I talk about with clients who I can spot generational differences in their environment. And it's important to understand how they work. So today's younger generations, they like to work independently. Oftentimes you see them with headphones, whereas some more traditional workers prefer higher cubicles.
Right.
The open concept is not for everybody. And I try to educate my clients. So even if it might look cool, it may not be the right functionality. So as part of my process, it's understanding how the space will be used and who are the users themselves.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, you absolutely have to take that into consideration. And I love the point that you made about recruits assessing the culture and the organization, if you will. I would think just the moment they walk in the lobby, I always remember taking my son to visit college campuses, and he made a decision within less than a minute that yes, this was a place he wanted to be, or no way, he didn't even want to go on the tour that was scheduled. So you're
Hmm.
absolutely right that people are making that decision based on what they first see when they walk into an organization. All right.
Well, it's funny, Leesa. Oh, I'm sorry. If I can just say in one
Go
moment
ahead.
that people spend a lot of money in marketing their brand,
Hmm.
and I always encourage them to think about their workplace as part of their brand because
Hmm.
just that reason. It is branding for recruits, and it's branding and creates sense of ownership for existing employees too. So it is a form of marketing in some sense.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about why it's important to work with a professional such as yourself.
So I will address the budgetary component and this preconceived notion that working with a designer comes with some level of expense. And I would say that it's an educated expense in the sense that I do this for a living and I can guide my clients where is the best use of their money and of their investments. And so there's a lot of ways, obviously, in workplace renovations where you can spend your money.
Yeah.
And uneducated decisions is a form of waste.
Hmm.
So when you have a designer or an owner's representative helping you work through your budget, understanding what your actual budget is,
Right.
they can take that money and show you where to allocate it.
Hmm.
So it's not a designer spending your money. It's somebody who's actually helping you understand the process and guide you through the smart decisions.
Right. That makes perfect sense. And Jennifer, I neglected to tell folks at the beginning of the presentation that these beautiful images that they're seeing are some of the workspaces that you have designed. And
Thank
they are beautiful. They're great.
you.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more now. How do you get started? How do you approach these makeovers, whether they're small makeovers or large ones? How would you get started?
Um, so for one, I always say that I've never had a client come to me and say that, they have an unlimited budget. Okay. It's just
Yeah.
not realistic.
Oh,
And so sometimes people are, I'd love to have that client, but that's not really the
wouldn't
case.
we all?
Yeah. But in any case, I think that from that perspective, it's important to really understand what is your budget, because those are numbers we need to talk about and be considerate of upfront.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so important.
When you are in your planning process, I think that going through and involving key employees
Mm,
and getting their opinions
mhm,
is impactful.
mhm.
Sometimes when we make decisions from an executive level, it does not necessarily reflect that of the general population. And
Absolutely.
small things, right?
They're
Go ahead.
too far removed. The executives are too far removed from the day to day, and oftentimes they overlook
Absolutely.
that. So that's a great point.
And there's a lot of things in terms of just functionality that can really, I've had things where somebody's really looking for a water cooler that costs $100, that if you incorporate it at the onset, it becomes far less obtrusive and part of the design
Mm,
than sticking something in a corner after the fact. and it goes a long way in terms of value and appreciation from the employees.
Absolutely. I never really thought about it that way, that you want to include everything as you're looking at how you're going to approach it. Okay, great. Well,
Even
certainly.
if something, oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Um, Go ahead.
Even if you're not looking at making your investment right away, I always encourage this holistic view of what you would like to accomplish, because I also work with my clients to help them phase their decision making and their implementation. So there could be a lot of things that functionality and problems are solved if you consider the end product before you start making implementation decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked a little bit why you should work with a professional. I would imagine some of the pushback that you get though is, I could work with my office furniture company and accomplish the same thing. So what do you say to a business owner who says something like that to you?
It's true, and in certain contexts. So if you are looking to just purchase furniture or have them space plan a certain layout, then absolutely they can do that for you. I think the value that somebody like me brings to the table is that I first and foremost consider your culture and who you are as a business. And so my intent of working with you is to have your interiors work cohesively with your strategic business goals. So for me, it's not just a floor plan. It's really helping you drive your business. The other component is furniture options. So oftentimes, dealers have certain lines that they promote. And the fact is, we have a universe of options that are available to us that can accommodate different needs that clients may have. And it's not to say anything bad about the furniture companies, because they're my partners and they're great partners. It's just that they are using the resources that are available to them within their business model. And then the last thing I would say is I work with the client. I mentioned earlier the branding, but also really from floor to ceiling. So as it relates to carpet choices, paint choices, window coverings, design on the ceiling. So the furniture vendors, it's not their specialty to get engaged with a full service renovation. They do space planning and sell the furnishings.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Okay. All right. So we talked about, you've mentioned a budget several times. So if you think about your budget and you only have X amount of dollars, where might an organization consider beginning to renovate?
Sure. That area is probably going to be different for every organization. I think it depends on what their existing interiors look like. However, what I would say, some areas or key areas that kind of come to mind for me would be the break room. So it can be a way that it's what I consider a quick fix to freshen up and provide some comfort and cleanliness for employees. That's usually pretty popular, especially in a manufacturing type of facility. We mentioned earlier lobby and its impact on people coming in. And so again, if you are a tier 1 supplier and you have anything less than a tier 1 environment, you might want to consider freshening up your lobby so that people's first impression reflects the product or service that you're trying to sell. Also, as we talked about earlier with the hiring initiatives,
Mm-hmm.
That could be very impactful for the recruits.
Right.
And then I mentioned earlier the phased approach.
Mm-hmm.
So if you feel that you want to throw your hands in the air and you're in despair because so much needs to be done, then that's when I really sit with clients and talk about their personal priorities and, how we could make that happen.
Mm. Makes sense. And the other part about thinking about your lobby, it's not just your employees who come through the door, it's your vendors, it might be
Mm-hmm.
a customer that's coming to your campus or your headquarters. So it really goes beyond your employees, and certainly the break rooms are always a reflection of a particular organization. And for me, the restrooms are always really important too.
Yeah.
What do they look like?
Yes, exactly. Cleanliness.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Definitely. Definitely. Okay. So you mentioned manufacturing. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if I remember correctly, you also help manufacturers with their space allocation on the manufacturing floor. Is that
Mm-hmm.
is that correct?
It is, and it sounds kind of like design and manufacturing in one sentence kind of seems awkward, but it's where I go back to talking about the functionality of the space. And when you talk about the allocation of space, it's exactly that. So if you have a limited office environment, for example, or limited office staff, I should say,
Mm-hmm.
and a large office environment, perhaps we should be considering using some of that square footage for more profit driving space, and make it part of the manufacturing floor. So I've worked with manufacturers to help them maximize that space, where one in particular comes to mind that was 10,000 square feet that they had in office space. And we basically got them down to about 5,000 square feet. And we took that 5,000 square feet that was remaining and added that to their existing floor. So they were able to bring in additional equipment and really help to make their flow more efficient in terms of how they use that space. So it's not always about high design, like I mentioned earlier.
Right.
It can just be smart design and picking the right products that go with your space, that go with the use, and also how much space you have allocated to certain tasks.
Wow. And you're making another very important point that it's everything. And so that's great to know that you can work with organizations on looking at all of their space and how it's allocated. Cool.
I had a professor once say to me, never look away from the type of client that comes to you, because there's great design in every space. And I remember being in design school when we visited a town's Department of Transportation.
Wow.
And you'd think, oh, wow, okay, it's a lot of trucks and,
Right.
this and that. But he had custom millwork throughout their office spaces to really help their paperwork and their process. And then he helped them build this giant indoor car wash for all their trucks.
Wow.
So design to me is not just about, pretty fancy things.
Right.
It's truly functionality, and it's very rewarding for me to be able to solve problems for my clients.
That's terrific. All right. Let's move on to, how do employers measure success after they've completed a makeover or refresh or even a major renovation?
So, being a former HR professional myself,
Yeah.
I will say that I know it's near impossible
Mm-hmm.
to make everybody happy.
Right.
And I encounter the same things in my design profession.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what's important is going back to engaging and getting that feedback from employees up front, right? You're really being considerate, and where you can implement those things, you'll know you're successful when the majority of your employees really are enjoying the new space, are using the space in the way that it was designed to be used. They are doing their job comfortably, productively, and the morale and camaraderie will just be evident.
Mm.
I think for HR professionals, it's also important to consider ergonomics,
Right.
and how that how that affects your workers' comp, your wellness,
Yep.
and it's a component of being mindful toward the well-being of your employee population.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I don't think you can underestimate the feedback and reaction from potential candidates or clients when they walk in.
Right.
And I kind of liken it to the comparison of a dining experience where you have a wobbly table and a chair that's on its last leg, like no pun intended, versus having a pleasurable dining experience where the ambiance and the space reflect your impression of the quality of food that's being served. Your space is one of your senses. You're seeing, you're smelling, you're touching, and that is all impacting how employees, clients, and the like all react in your space.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you can't underestimate employee wellness or the workers' comp component, particularly looking at ergonomic workspaces. So I think those are really a couple of key measurements that you could look at.
Absolutely. And today, in my opinion, there's no excuse not to have ergonomically correct chairs and workspaces. There's so many affordable options that can still deliver a quality service.
Mm-hmm.
And it's where I try to guide clients to consider.
That's good to know. All right. So we're going to be coming to the end of our time here soon. And I just have one more sort of general question for you. What else would you want our listeners to know about enhancing the workspace and how you go about doing that?
I think overall it's to not feel threatened by using a designer, that it can actually help you maximize your investment and kind of push the envelope of what your workspace can be with very little additional dollars than you want to spend to begin with.
Right.
Decisions like it's silly things that often are lost opportunities in terms of a fabric on a chair. Instead of black, why is it not your brand colors? And so throughout the design process, you have this chance to make these decisions that can really create a branded look.
Right.
And with someone like my help, that you really optimize each of those decisions.
Okay, great. The black fabric was probably the least expensive fabric. That's why they wanted to go with that.
Oh, but I'll challenge that, Leesa. There's still grade 1 fabrics in a host of colors.
All right. Very good. Very good. Okay. So thank you to those of you who chose to listen to this HR chat. Uh, and I would encourage you to visit our website and subscribe to our newsletter for future Cardis Larson HR chat videos. And you can follow us on social media to receive HR updates that can benefit you and your business. Thanks and have a great day.